Because, yeah, I mean, with an eating disorder, you're faced with food constantly throughout the day. So every day you're having to make this choice of, do I say yes to recovery? Do I say maybe? Do I say no?
Hi, this is Shelomo Solson, the host of the Teenage Impact Podcast, where we share stories, tips, and strategies on how you as a teenage kid can overcome your daily struggles in life. If you're tuning in for the very first time and you've listened to some of these episodes, it's been very helpful for you, it's been useful, go ahead, rate and review the Teenage Impact Podcast. I'm trying to be ranked higher so I can inspire more teens. If you have a friend, a family member, a classmate who's in this funk, who can't seem to get out of it, recommend the Teenage Impact Podcast to them, because I have interviewed so many people from all around the world, from all different types of struggles, that anywhere from suicidal, anxiety, depression, dwarfism, paralyzed. Today's podcast guest is Francesca Rose. Francesca is an author, blogger, and influencer that lives in South Africa, inspiring people to overcome eating disorders and have a healthier relationship with food. She herself has gone through some of these types of struggles. In 2009, she started receiving help for going through anorexia, orthorexia, and having an exercise addiction. Today's podcast episode is going to be on her journey and different healing strategies on how you can overcome eating disorders. Give it up for Francesca Rose. I'm so lucky to have Francesca Rose with me today. How are you, Francesca?
Wonderful. Thank you for having me.
Now, Francesca is someone I met on Instagram. She is a vegan. She went through a lot of different types of struggles. Francesca, you mentioned that you recover from anorexia, orthorexia, exercise addiction. Before we go into your story, can you tell the audience a little bit more about what those mean?
Sure. So anorexia is a form of an eating disorder where one would heavily restrict their food intake, usually to lose weight. It is sometimes noticeable from an outsider's perspective and sometimes is not, because while there are external things that one could see, such as a loss of a menstrual cycle or losing a lot of weight, hair falling out, being very moody, depressed, anxious, there's also a lot of internal thoughts that preoccupies the mind around food, and that's often what people don't see. And orthorexia is similar, but it is a preoccupation with clean eating and this desire to eat pure food. Whatever one's own personal definition of what healthy food is, they would be ascribing to that form of like super, super healthy food. And that can lead into overall lifestyle, to the type of water that comes out of the shower, to how they prepare food. And it often results in people just not really being particularly sociable with friends or family because they don't want anybody else to prepare their food. They have to know what's going into everything. An exercise addiction, I guess, as the name implies, is just an obsession with exercising and often used as a way to numb out hard feelings, to make up for any foods that were eaten. Can be sometimes as a form of punishment. If one doesn't complete the exercise or exercises of the day, there's a lot of anxiety and restlessness and guilt. Yeah, I guess that kind of hopefully describes those three terms.
Yeah, and then what age did you realize that you're going through these issues?
Well, I think from a very young age, I had quite an awareness of what was healthy and what was not. But my eating disorder started around kind of 2007 going into 2008. Not everybody picked that up early on, but my thought patterns around food started to become more obsessive. And by 2008, 2009, which was my final year at school, people began to notice. And at the end of my school year, so at the end of 2009, I went to a clinic for treatment as an inpatient for a few weeks. And that was the start of a long journey. Prior to that, while I was still in school, I was seeing a dietitian and going to a therapist, but not particularly convinced of recovery, just kind of going through the motions, so to speak.
And why do you think you were going through those eating disorders? Was this something happening in school? What people were saying? Is it something that you were looking in social media? What was it?
Yeah, I mean, many things that all added up. At the root of my eating disorder is this big fear of rejection and this fear of becoming a woman and what it means to fully step into myself. And by controlling this shape of my body, kind of pre-puberty, in this like pre-puberty type form, with this childlike form, I was trying to control these very scary changes that were happening to my body. Yeah, I guess it was this fear of this greatness and this fear that if I let everything go, my whole world will spin out of control. So that was one aspect. The other aspect was this perfectionist inside of me that wanted to be the best, and I had this very sick and twisted mentality that by being the thinnest person in the room, being the smallest person in the room, and still being able to get good grades at school and being able to do all these other extramurals and sports and things like that, I just felt like I was this superhuman. It was like very dark, twisted, ego-centric approach to life, which really wasn't helping me in any way. And so, yeah, it was a way of staying small and not letting things get out of hand. But often when that happens is that if you kind of become numb, because the hard feelings that you're trying to block off, this wall that you're creating to not feel this vulnerable aspects of yourself, you don't feel the really tough emotions. You also don't feel all the wonderful emotions. So life becomes kind of gray and very sad, really. I think that was kind of what was going on. I think I also really wanted to hold on to this identity of being the small person, and my eating disorder gave me an identity, and I kind of didn't know who I was without it.
Towards the end of high school, you started developing these behaviors. In between, developing these behaviors, can you go into a little bit in specific on what those behaviors were? Like from what you did before to what you were doing in the end of high school?
Well, I just started changing what I ate.
Okay.
And I started changing how much I ate. I didn't want anybody to prepare my food, so that meant that I didn't really go out, to eat out with friends or birthday parties. So I also kind of became quite reclusive and isolated. I became quite sneaky around what I ate and would lie. And that was the same with exercise, would lie about how much exercise I did and when I was doing it. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the broad picture of what went down.
And what's that turning point in your life where you decided to get help?
Yeah, I've had that question before, and for me, my recovery has been this very, very slow process, and it's still ongoing. I think that there were just many people along the way who helped. Who all came at a very good time, obviously when I was ready for them. The clinic, as difficult as it was, definitely did save my life in many respects. As much as I resisted it, it was a big help. I also did some solo traveling and just got this like wonderful fresh perspective on life again, and kind of reclaimed my power and independence. And around that time, I also decided to go off the contraceptive pill, which essentially the pill gives this fake menstrual cycle. I was still getting a period when I knew that I was still technically underweight, but from the outside it looked like everything was fine and happening because my period was coming every month. Anyway, when I went off the pill, I knew that I would have to gain weight if I wanted to establish a healthy and regular cycle. And so while I was traveling, that was something that I did. I just threw all of my pills in the bin, and I knew that I wasn't going to be able to get anything from the chemist while traveling. And that was definitely the start of something as well.
Where did you travel to?
Well, I traveled for about 6.5 months, and I was in the States, I was in Central America and Europe. And when that incident happened, when I just threw all those pills away, I was volunteering at a yoga retreat in like the middle of nowhere in Spain. Yeah, so that was quite an empowering trip.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think like for me with recovery, it really just has been time and getting a bit older and just slowly learning to realize my own self-worth and realize my greatness through the help of others, and just doing stuff.
Yeah, I was going through some of your posts, and someone did ask that. So what has been your biggest challenge with the whole recovery, besides the whole patience part?
Yeah, probably the trickiest thing is trying to remember that my body doesn't define who I am. Ultimately, an eating disorder is not necessarily like a direct link to food. It's this unhealthy coping mechanism that has that I've chosen, that's kept me safe. And I think the biggest challenge of my recovery is just really learning to trust my greatness, really, not to really care what people think too much, and not be too concerned about being perfect all the time or being the best in the room. And so a lot of ego stuff.
So were you saying a lot of it stems from not from food actually, but from your mind, and trying to really understand who you are as a person, and trying to be more self-aware of who you are and what you're capable of doing? And that's not directly linked to food. You use food, but instead you're kind of working on being a little bit more self-aware with your own self. So it's really a journey within yourself.
100%. Really well said. Yeah, that's exactly it. Totally. And a lot of it is becoming comfortable with allowing those vulnerabilities to shine. And that's really how we all connect. If we can all share our vulnerabilities with one another, we connect, and that's what we all really want at the end of the day, is to be seen by others and appreciated for who we are. And an eating disorder really creates this big wall that kind of was around me, and hid myself from myself and hid myself from other people, and all my vulnerabilities were signs of weakness, and I was afraid of my emotions and of my emotions getting too big. And so that wall was to protect myself, and then I just became isolated and very sad.
What has been some of the best healing strategies that you've implemented?
Look, I do think therapy is great if one can get access to it, and there are some great affordable ways to go about it over and above just one-on-one private practice type therapy. If one can get access to a counselor or even a dietitian who practices in intuitive eating, or the HAES model, which stands for Health at Every Size, think that's definitely the route to go. I know, like, it sounds like all cliched and like obvious, but I mean they're obvious because they work. Meditation, being in nature, dancing, mantras, yoga, community, friends, journaling. Yeah, also I do use and I do microdose with mushrooms, which I know is maybe not legal everywhere, but I find that it's been a very powerful way to basically rewire my brain. So that's a whole nother topic. But again, it's just like, if you ultimately actually, if you want to get better, or how recovery really works is just this internal desire to get better, because you can go to all the therapies and all the dietitian appointments, and you can sit there and you can say the right things, because also with an eating disorder you do become quite sneaky, which is a very dark side that comes up, which is not you. And one also has to really make peace with those kind of sneaky manipulative things that we've done, or that I've done, whatever. And so, yeah, I guess it's just that commitment at every meal to make the choice of recovery, and only that can come from oneself, from within.
And it's so true, because just with anything, I know when I used to have anxiety, and I had anxiety for the longest time, I would always try to get better, but then I would never get better. But as soon as I made that decision, hey, I'm going to do whatever it takes, it's that between the 95% commitment and 100% commitment. Those who make the 95% commitment and say they try, it's another way of saying, hey, I try my best, but if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But when you go all in and you say, I'm going to do whatever it takes to actually try to recover, and that's when the road to recovery becomes substantially faster. Or if you even have any goals that has nothing to do with recovery, when you go all in versus when you make a 95% commitment, most of the time, someone who goes all in gets what he or she wants, versus someone who says they're going to try their best and try these different things. Most of the time, or half the time, it doesn't work out.
Yeah, agreed. And also, if you go all in and there are days where it doesn't work out, that's also okay.
Yeah.
Just to also have that that self-compassion. Because I mean, with an eating disorder, you're faced with food constantly throughout the day. So every day you're having to make this choice of, do I say yes to recovery? Or do I say maybe? Do I say no? And just to kind of continue on that path, whatever decision you make, just keep on going, and as much as possible choose to say yes.
Now, how can someone deal with body image struggles?
Good question. It's not easy. Yeah, I mean, we've been told that there's a certain body type that we have to achieve, and this body type, this kind of thin ideal, comes with many associations, such as if you look a certain way, you are considered more attractive, but you're also considered more successful and more productive and more efficient, smart, even intelligent. And yeah, it's amazing how someone with one body comes with all these associations, versus someone in usually a larger body is discriminated against, or we stereotype a person in a larger body to be X, Y, and Z. And so with body image, it's actually kind of just saying, like, F it, like, screw it to all of these constructed associations around a specific body type, and to try as much as possible not chase this created bullshit, really, because we all come into this world in a temple, and each temple looks different, and we can't all look the same, but someone somewhere along the line said that we should. You're a bad person if you don't look like that. And so it's just, yeah, it's kind of saying no to those societal pressures and peer pressure and media pressure and parental pressure and like all the pressure. It's intense. It's not easy. So I have compassion for everybody, including myself, who struggle with body issues, because it's not easy just to like, get over. It's constant. Those messages are being bombarded constantly at us.
Especially at social media now too.
Oh God, yeah, totally.
Yeah, when I actually didn't realize this until I was probably in college, or actually a little bit after college. I always used to hear other people. I always used to hear women, always be in a certain body image. And when I was younger, I never understood. But I know for men, a lot of them look for, success and money. And so I start comparing myself with those men, because society puts this label on you that you have to be a certain body image, or you have to have a certain level of success by a certain level of age. And so especially with social media, what people don't realize is that everyone has their own journey, and everyone really has their own process, and everyone has their own style. It's not a one size fit all. And when you think it's a one size fit all because of what your friend group tells you, or what social media you see on social media, then you really think of, you really do a certain thing to a certain level of degree and extremity.
Yeah.
And it's just because what someone else made up. But you really have to find within, during this process, you really have to find within what's right for you.
Yeah. No, totally. The comparison game is a dead end game and just results in just extreme unhappiness. And unfortunately, social media just makes it just, I mean, we all know it, but we all forget it, that social media just provides a tiny little sliver of life, which is that little sliver is also constructed. And so when we start comparing ourselves to that, we're comparing ourselves to something that is not real, but it's so easy to forget that. I don't know why.
It's hard, because when you're 15, 16 years old, especially in school, kids are cruel. Kids are going to make fun of you. Doesn't matter what you are. It doesn't matter how perfect you are. Kids will always try to find something to make fun of you for or bully you for. What are 3 tips you would give to a 15, 16-year-old that's going through that same thing?
Oh, gosh. I mean, I'm just imagining myself at that age. Just like want to give her a big hug and just tell her that you may not believe me, but it's going to be okay. I know it doesn't feel like I know it feels like nothing's okay, but it will be. And I guess just I didn't understand the concept of projections when I was younger, and how I know it's hard not to take things personally when that pain is so real and so felt. But sometimes people act in very mean ways without even realizing it. Yeah. And so in those situations, like, speak out and be honest and speak to somebody who you feel safe with. Because when I got bullied, I kept it in. and I didn't tell anybody, and it was really, really hard. And then with my eating disorder, I didn't say anything, and it was really, really hard. Yeah, I don't know if I have any tips. That was, I guess, more of a reflection than practical tips. Maybe I have to think about that.
I mean, yeah, the best thing you could do is speak out. Speak
Yeah.
out. Don't. Many times we think we're weak if we speak out, that we're getting bullied, but in reality, you can't get help if you don't talk to anyone about it.
It's so true. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely it. I felt like I was going to get into trouble and that I was weak if I said something.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I want to get into the misconceptions. What are some misconceptions of having a eating disorder?
Well, as I said in the beginning, someone who may not look like they have an eating disorder may very well have an eating disorder or may have disordered eating. So there's no specific body type. Like anybody can have an eating disorder. That's definitely one of them. It's funny because I was told that people with eating disorders never get over it. That it's something that if you have an eating disorder, quote unquote, you'll never be able to get rid of it. And I believed that for a very long time. And I think that actually kept me more sick than healthy. And possibly also made me quite complacent with my recovery. Because you can get to like a very comfortable place where on the outside it kind of looks like you're doing all the right things to be in recovery, but on the inside there's still a lot of preoccupation with food and guilt and shame and anxiety and all of that. And so I actually do think it's a myth or a misconception that you can't get better. I think you can, and I've seen it with people who I do follow on social media. So that's another one. I can't think of any more now.
And what about if you know a loved one that is going through anorexia or has anorexia? What advice would you tell them?
Well, I would definitely make sure that I'm in a safe place, in a very calm space before approaching the person. I wouldn't do it at the dinner table or in some kind of attacking voice. And number one is definitely don't comment on body size or shape. Something as simple as, wow, you're looking really skinny, can provide a lot of ammunition for somebody to continue with what they're doing.
Validation.
Validation, exactly. Then on the other hand, very like well-meaning people may say, you're looking good, you're looking healthy, and that's misconstrued into I'm fat, I'm bad, I'm ugly, and can send somebody in a spiral. So I would never go up to a person and comment on their body shape or size. But what I would say to somebody is, I would love to see your light again. I would love to see the joy in your eyes again. What can I do to help? Maybe be out in nature and just start to open up that conversation of what do you need to do to find joy in life again, and then do those things with that person and get that spark back. Because when you're deep in an eating disorder, your whole world just revolves around food, what you ate, when you're going to eat, and like your whole life and your passions start to then just revolve around food and possibly also exercise and all the other wonderful things that you used to do, creative things, social things, fade away. And so to bring that back, to find perspective in life again and see the broader picture again is important. And to focus on, again, that inner light, how to focus rather on that rather than the external. Yeah. And I also suggest possibly, if the person is open to it, asking if they can go and get professional care or seeing a therapist or a dietitian or a doctor or somebody. Most people are more open to hearing from a more objective party than a family member or even a friend. So yeah.
Absolutely. And now to kind of almost close the interview, I saw your Instagram page. You're vegan. Around what age did you become vegan, or have you always been vegan?
No, I became vegan in about 2014.
So
So
about 5 years ago.
yeah, so after my kind of initial big phase of recovery. And yeah, I mean, I choose to eat vegan for like major ethical reasons. And I firmly believe that it's a way to help alleviate some pressure, environmental pressure on the planet. It doesn't mean that everybody has to go vegan. I do think that we can all eat a little bit less meat, and it's happening. And that's also not to say that veganism can't, I think any diet can become and can turn into an eating disorder. You can be restrictive in veganism, you can be restrictive if you're not vegan, and it just really depends on the mentality. I think some people use veganism as a way to restrict and to avoid quote unquote impure food or like not clean food. And that's a tricky one to navigate. But I think that if there's a strong ethical stance or environmental stance behind it, yeah, I think it's okay.
What's your favorite recipes?
Oh,
I'm starting to have a lot of.
sweet or savory, breakfast, lunch, dinner.
I saw this one post where you had, I think, chocolate oatmeal or
Ah,
chocolate pudding.
yeah, I love to add chocolatey things.
Yeah.
Um, chocolate at breakfast. Just add cacao to oats or to a smoothie or to pancakes, or you can even like make some stuff with sweet potato and I don't know, just go wild with cacao.
Yeah, yeah, I'm starting to have actually a lot of my friends and family members. I mean, they're starting off like pescatarian, and then slowly their goal is to become vegan. And like you said,
Cool.
environmental, better for the environment. They don't want to kill animals. Health reasons. There's all sorts of either benefits, but you have to feel like it's right for you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
totally. And there's also like no, you're not morally obligated
yeah.
to do anything really. If it's something that feels right for you, then do it.
Hmm.
And for me,
And
going vegan was just, yeah, felt very much in alignment. Yeah.
And do you have any last tips? 16-year-old who has a eating disorder and trying to recover, or someone who's in the recovery process?
Mm. I think it's important not to compare your recovery to anybody else. Everyone's recovery looks a bit different, and there's no like time frame on it. But if you're wanting to get better, if you want to get back to that inner light and joy and love again that we were all born with, and also to be able to eat freely, intuitively again, that we were all born with, knowing how to do, then it will happen. That you just need that desire to walk that process, and it's it's a long path, and it's not always glamorous, and it's certainly painful, and having people by your side helps, and they will be there for you because you've chosen to take that courageous step, and that doesn't go unnoticed in this big magical universe. There are people there for you if you're willing to take that stand against that very critical voice, which is not yours. It's not your
Yeah,
voice.
these are really, really great tips, Francesca. I really do appreciate you being on the show, sharing your great insight, being vulnerable, sharing your story. And there's a lot of people who are afraid to tell their story because they're either ashamed of it, or they don't really want to be open. But the more open you are, the more people you can help. And not only more people you can help, the more people you can educate, because there's a lot of people who don't know much about it, including myself. I'm still trying to learn. about the eating disorders. I don't know anyone who've had to overcome it that I know of. And just by you being on the show, you're educating people and you're helping people at the same time. So really do appreciate it. And where can people find you?
Yeah, so thank you for all of that. Thank you for saying all of that. Yeah, Instagram's always a great place, at Francesca Eats Roses. I'm pretty responsive on there. I'm also on Facebook, but Instagram's is best, and my website is francescaeatsroses.com. And I do have some recovery-based blogs.
Yeah. I'll include your Instagram and website on the podcast description, just so if people want to message you for any further tips.
Cool.
Awesome.
Thank you for having me.
Not a problem. Bye-bye. Today's podcast episode was the first podcast episode on eating disorders by interviewing Francesca Rose, who went through these different types of eating disorders and her journey on overcoming it. Usually I have 3 or 4 takeaways, but today I only have 2 takeaways. The first takeaway is, on your road to recovery, it's not about taking away certain foods or eating certain foods. It's about knowing your inner self, who you are as a person. And many times when we develop unhealthy habits, whether it is eating disorders or whether it's something else, it really has to do with the habit, and it has more to do with loving your inner self and knowing who you are as a person. So on the road to recovery, you have to dig deep and ask yourself, who am I? What do I like? What do I not like? And when we're asking these types of questions, stop trying to have other factors of influence, like other people's opinion, like social media. And you really have to dig deep and know who you are, so your road to recovery can be faster and you can live a healthier lifestyle. A second takeaway I got from interviewing Francesca Rose is a lot of our unhealthy habits come from comparing ourselves with other people, like in social media. A male and a female, when you have an image in your brain on how you're supposed to look, that's when unhealthy habits form. So on your road to recovery, not only do I think that you should really dig deep and know who you are as a person, is number 2, second takeaway is you should stop comparing yourself with other people, because comparing yourself with other people is going to be a dark road, a dark path into failure, because you can never live up to someone else's expectation. You never know what someone else is going through. So instead of comparing yourself with someone else, compare yourself to yourself from yesterday. This concludes this podcast episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you haven't done so, download my 7 quick and easy ways to feel better about yourself. These are tips I've compiled over the past 8 years of my life, and based off of the 30 interviews that I have done with different people from all around the world. So these are 7 quick and easy ways you can start implementing today, and these are life-changing. So go ahead and download it. And until next time, peace.